What made the Kamchatka sky erupt into fire? On October 6, 2025 at 3:10 a.m., the night hung unnaturally still above the peninsula. A lone Leleka 100 reconnaissance drone picked up a faint thermal pulse, two Mi-24s cooling on the ramp, fuel trucks idling, and a Nebo-M radar slowly turning toward the sea. Commercial infrared overlays sharpened the picture. More than 1.1 million pounds of aviation fuel and stacked munitions ready for weeks of operations. This was no random outpost. It was a lifeline. Ukraine answered with a plan both simple and ruthless. Operation Echo Trap. Launch 2 TB2 decoys to draw radar fire, force a reset, then push 4 silent FP-1 strike UAVs low through the gap to slam into the Mi-24 cluster, a B-12 patrol plane, and the Nebo-M antenna. Timing would be everything. Precision would be fatal. Could Russia's air defenses see through the deception? Or would a handful of drones carve a 90-kilometer blind corridor into Moscow's Pacific Shield? In minutes, the night would reveal the answer. At 3:10 a.m., October 6, 2025, over the frozen stillness of the Kamchatka Peninsula, a single Ukrainian Leleka 100 reconnaissance drone drifted silently through the night. The air was thin, the temperature barely 28 degrees Fahrenheit, and the sea below was nothing but black glass. From its thermal camera, 2 faint orange glows appeared. 2 Russian Mi-24 attack helicopters had just landed. Within seconds, the onboard AI confirmed what the human eye might miss. This was not a forward strip. It was a fully operational airbase hidden within the tundra. Commercial infrared satellites joined the watch. The data came back shocking: over 1.2 million pounds of aviation fuel, hundreds of tons of 30mm ammunition, and a radar cluster of Nebo-M and Podlet K-1 units, designed to track stealth aircraft up to 270 miles away. This was no ordinary outpost. It was a logistical heart, a node feeding Russian air operations across the Far East. If it were destroyed, a 90-kilometer blind zone would open across Russia's Pacific defenses. Inside Ukraine's command center in Zaporizhzhia, analysts fell silent. Every coordinate, every infrared pulse matched a perfect target set. The base was alive, fuel trucks idling, ground crews laughing beside the hangars, unaware that their routine night had just been marked for history. Then came the whisper on the comms line. Echo Trap confirmed. No speeches, no hesitation, just cold precision. Within 15 minutes, this still night would be ripped apart by fire and sound. But at that moment, under the thin blue glow of the Leleka 100's optical feed, the world above Kamchatka was calm, unaware that a war hundreds of miles away had just reached its doorstep. What happens next would prove that silence is the deadliest weapon of all. By 3:12 a.m., the evidence was undeniable. What Leleka 100 had found was not just an airfield, it was Russia's eastern lifeline. Satellite overlays revealed a sprawling complex of 12 hangars, 4 fuel silos, and a buried command center reinforced with 3 feet of concrete and steel. Inside those silos sat more than 500,000 gallons of aviation fuel, enough to keep Mi-24 and B-12 patrols flying over the Pacific for 2 weeks straight. The base wasn't defensive, it was offensive infrastructure. From here, Russian aircraft launched resupply missions toward Chukotka and Khabarovsk, forming a chain that stretched across 2,000 miles of coastline. Its radar systems, Nebo-M, with a 270-mile range, and Podlet K-1, designed to detect low-flying drones, formed a dome of electronic protection that had kept the entire Kamchatka sector untouchable for months. Destroying this hub wouldn't just mean silencing a radar, it would fracture the logistics artery that fed Russia's eastern forces. Without Kamchatka's base, troop movements would slow by 60%. Refueling flights would reroute an additional 430 miles, and air defenses would go blind for at least 5 crucial hours. Ukraine's analysts saw it clearly. This wasn't an opportunity, it was the opportunity. Every gallon of fuel here, every missile in storage, represented future attacks waiting to happen. Neutralize this base and the entire region would stumble. At 3:20 a.m., the order came through. Target confirmed. Proceed to Echo Trap. The silence in the command room broke. Now the clock began to count down. Will a handful of silent drones and a single, perfectly timed deception be enough to crack Kamchatka's steel shield? At 3:25 a.m., the calm over Kamchatka shattered. Inside Ukraine's underground command center in Zaporizhzhia, a single phrase appeared on the encrypted feed. Echo Trap. Live. The plan that had taken 6 weeks of precision mapping and 32 satellite passes was finally in motion. 2 Bayraktar TB2 decoys climbed through the freezing mist, cruising at 8,200 feet, and broadcasting on open frequencies, bright, obvious, deliberate. Their composite skins radiated false signals across 2.4 and 5.8 gigahertz, mimicking a full assault formation. Russian radar screens at Yelizovo Air Base began to light up. The Podlet K-1 unit flagged multiple bogies. Within seconds, the Nebo-M radar array, valued at nearly $50 million, switched to high power mode and locked onto the intruders. At 3:30 a.m., a Panzer SM battery opened fire. 30 shells and 6 interceptor missiles tore into the sky, shredding the decoys. Operators celebrated too early. On their screens, 2 targets had disappeared. To them, the threat was over. In reality, it had only just begun. Below radar coverage, less than 500 feet above the ice, 4 FP-1 strike UAVs glided forward, silent and dark. Each carried a 165-pound shape-charge warhead capable of cutting through steel hangars and fuel tanks. No transponders, no GPS beacons, just inertial navigation and timing down to the millisecond. At 3:32 a.m., the 3 aircraft split formation, sliding into the narrow radar gap left after the decoy strike. From the Russian perspective, the sky was empty. From Ukraine's screen, a white line moved steadily toward the coordinates, 53 degrees north, 158 degrees east. A voice whispered through the static. All units green, 3 minutes to impact. The room fell silent. The trap was perfect, and the world was seconds away from seeing what precision meant in modern war. This is the moment of truth. Will cunning outmatch firepower? Don't blink. You're about to see it. 3:33 a.m., the night above Kamchatka cracked open. The 4 FP-1 strike UAVs cut through the darkness, hugging the frozen tundra at 310 feet altitude, their engines barely audible beneath the coastal wind. On Russian scopes, the screen was blank. No return, no warning. Inside the base, ground crews were still refueling the Mi-24s. Music played from a portable speaker. Soldiers laughed, pouring tea into tin cups. They never heard the drones coming. At 3:34:47, Falcon 9 made the final correction. The first FP-1 accelerated to 152 miles per hour, diving toward the Mi-24 cluster parked on the western apron. Its warhead, 165 pounds of shaped explosive, hit the rotor hub at a 27-degree angle. The detonation tore through the helicopter's titanium frame, producing a fireball over 360 feet high. The shockwave shattered nearby hangar windows and hurled fuel barrels more than 400 feet. The second Mi-24 exploded seconds later, its ammunition igniting like a chain of fireworks. At 3:35:02, the second FP-1 broke formation and plunged straight into the Nebo-M radar array. The antenna, 45 feet tall and rotating slowly, was hit dead center. The explosion released an overpressure exceeding 48 pounds per square inch, flattening communication trailers and killing every operator inside the control cabin. The radar's dome disintegrated into molten shards, raining metal fragments across a quarter-mile radius. The last 2 FP-1s reached its target 12 seconds later, the 2 B-12 maritime reconnaissance planes near the fuel depot. The blast ignited over 500,000 gallons of aviation fuel, transforming the northern section of the base into a lake of fire. Flames leapt higher than 100 meters, and the pressure wave was felt 18 miles away in the coastal town of Yelizovo. Inside the base perimeter, chaos erupted. Sirens wailed, soldiers screamed orders through thick smoke. 43 personnel were confirmed injured within the first minute, and 17 others were never accounted for again. Ammunition bunkers began to cook off, each detonation louder than the last. Trucks flipped. Storage tanks collapsed. The entire flight line turned into molten steel. By 3:36 a.m., communication from the Kamchatka Air Command ceased entirely. Satellite imagery captured a single massive thermal bloom nearly 1,400 feet wide, engulfing what was once Russia's most fortified eastern airbase. For Ukraine's operators watching in silence, there was no cheer, no celebration, only the quiet hum of confirmation signals. The strike had landed. The base was gone. By 3:40 a.m., the fireball over Kamchatka was visible from 40 miles away. Local fishermen at Avacha Bay thought a volcano had erupted. But this was no act of nature. It was the precision hand of modern war. The entire base, once a maze of steel and fuel, had become a single, glowing crater. Flames consumed hangars, runways, and barracks alike. Satellite readings from the U.S. firm Maxar later showed surface temperatures exceeding 1,200 degrees Celsius, enough to melt the alloy frames of Mi-24's and B-12's aircraft into pools of molten metal. At 4:10 a.m., Russia's Pacific Command attempted to re-establish contact. There was none. The last recorded message from the base, a single broken transmission, read, "Radar down, fuel, fire, requesting evac," before the line went dead. Within the hour, the Kamchatka Peninsula's eastern defense grid went dark. Nebo-M's destruction opened a 90-kilometer blind corridor, exposing the Pacific airspace from Petropavlovsk to Ust-Kamchatsk. When daylight arrived, satellite images revealed a nightmare. 3 Mi-24 attack helicopters reduced to burnt skeletons. 2 B-12 reconnaissance planes vaporized beyond recognition. 1.1 million pounds of aviation fuel lost. Over 60% of the base's personnel incapacitated. 43 wounded, 17 confirmed dead, many buried beneath collapsed concrete shelters. Russian state media called it a technical malfunction, but independent analysts knew the truth within hours. The precision, timing, and electromagnetic silence pointed unmistakably to Operation Echo Trap, a Ukrainian mission executed with surgical perfection. Strategically, the impact was immediate. Russian fuel convoys were forced to reroute 430 miles west, tripling transit times. Eastern helicopter operations were grounded for 48 hours, crippling troop mobility across the Pacific frontier. For the first time since the war began, a Ukrainian drone strike had not only pierced Russia's radar wall, but erased an entire military district from the map. Inside Ukraine's command center, the screens dimmed. Mission complete. No applause. Just data. Timestamps, signal losses, and one glowing red zone where an airbase used to be. In that silence, one truth emerged. In modern warfare, victory doesn't belong to the largest army or the loudest weapon. It belongs to those who strike unseen, at the exact second the enemy stops watching. When the smoke finally cleared over Kamchatka, only silence remained. The once bustling airbase, home to hundreds of Russian personnel, machines, and munitions, had been reduced to a blackened scar across the frozen tundra. Satellite images taken hours later showed a charred grid of runways, scorched fuel depots, and twisted radar towers. What had stood as a symbol of Russian reach in the Pacific was now nothing but ash and molten steel. By sunrise, emergency crews still struggled to control secondary explosions. Aviation fuel burned deep beneath the surface, creating underground fires that would smolder for days. The air smelled of metal and jet fuel. Across the peninsula, radar operators watched their screens flicker with static. Their eastern sky had gone blind. For Moscow, the loss was more than financial. It was psychological. A fortress once considered untouchable had fallen in under 7 minutes. Operation Echo Trap would soon be studied in war colleges around the world. A model of precision, deception, and timing. With 3 small drones, Ukraine had paralyzed an entire region's defense, proving that technology and intellect could outweigh raw power and cost. The total damage exceeded $220 million, but the greater blow was invisible: Russia's confidence in its own security. As the world debated what this meant for the future of warfare, one truth stood above all. Modern battles are no longer fought by who fires first, but by who thinks first. And as the flames in Kamchatka slowly died, One message echoed across every command center and every battlefield screen. In the silence between detection and reaction lies the moment that decides everything. Ukraine had found that moment and turned it into victory. If you want more stories like this, subscribe and stay with us. New intelligence drops every week. If you found this analysis insightful and want to support more in-depth breakdowns like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss the next unfolding conflict.